Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's joined us today for this EURAXESS webinar on the MSCA Individual Fellowship Call 2020. Thanks so much for joining us. Let me just briefly introduce everybody who will be speaking today. We have in the middle my colleague Tomasz, who is the country representative for EURAXESS in Korea. Hi, Tomasz.
Hello, good afternoon, welcome everybody, greetings from Seoul.
And we have our expert speaker, Dr. Isabelle Spuehler, who is based in Switzerland, and she is the national contact point for the MSCA IF. That means she is the expert lady to share her wisdom on how you can draft a successful proposal for this prestigious fellowship. My name is Susanne. Hi, sorry, Isabelle. My name is Susanne Renzovasu. I am the regional representative for EURAXESS ASEAN. I'm based in Singapore. And again, welcome today. Let's just get started straight away on the presentation. I will just quickly recap what this proposal or what this fellowship is all about that we're talking about today. And then I will hand over to Isabelle, who is really much more interesting, I guess, for you all to listen to. So let me just share my slides here. What are we talking about today? We are talking about the MSCA individual fellowships and maybe just briefly explaining what this means. You will come across MSCA a lot in all the literature related to EU postgrad funding. MSCA, of course, stands for Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. We have the lady here on the left, Marie Skłodowska-Curie, a Polish-French scientist who did great discoveries, and she is the namesake for this particular program, MSCA, which is really dedicated to the training of researchers, so career development for researchers of all nationalities and of all scientific disciplines. And MSCA is part of the wider EU framework program for research and innovation, currently called Horizon 2020, just for you to get an idea where this fellowship fits in the wider framework of EU funding. Importantly, and you should all know this by now, what are the call dates? This call has been open for a while. The closing date is the 9th of September, so you still have 2.5 months to fine-tune your proposal. The individual fellowships that we're talking about today are personal fellowships. So they're for you as an individual researcher. They are postdoctoral fellowships, and they support a period of mobility, which means you have to move, in this case, to Europe to complete a period of up to 2 years to do your postdoc research. You can do so either with an academic or a non-academic host. The individual fellowships are really a comprehensive career development tool. So it's an opportunity, of course, for you to become an expert in a specific scientific topic that you're working on, but it's really about allowing you to make yourself ready for your next step in your career development, to become a PI, to become a leader in your field. Which research topics are funded? And as you all know by now, this is a fellowship that is open to all domains of research. And importantly, it is you as the applicant that decides what topic you would like to research on. The principle that applies here is the bottom-up principle. That means there are no predefined thematic areas. This is really open to all aspects of scientific research, including the sciences, social sciences, and the humanities. Who can apply for this? Once again, this is open to all nationalities, and I know today we have participants from all over the world, very nicely, and it's open again to all academic disciplines. There is also no age or experience limit, so that's interesting for you to know. There are, of course, eligibility criteria. The first one refers to your qualifications. And you would need to have a PhD at the time of the call deadline, which is the 9th of September. That means you must have the PhD in hand, or you should have at least 4 years of research experience. Now that means after you have completed, for example, your master's degree, which allows you to continue and read for a PhD, you should have acquired 4 years of research relevant experience. Now, how do you document this? This is a question we always get. Isabelle can probably also explain this later on. If someone has this question, you could have a contract, you could show your research output that you have produced during that time, you could show any patents, for example. Maybe to keep in mind, the majority of successful applicants do have a PhD though. The second one refers to the criterion of mobility, and I said that before. This is a fellowship that requires you to move. In your case, you would have to move to Europe for the duration of 1 to 2 years. And you might wonder now which European countries are involved in this scheme, and you can see them here. It is the 27 member states of the European Union on the left-hand side, and the 16 associated countries that are part of the European research area on the right-hand side. Hopefully by now you will all already have zoomed in on a country and zoomed in on a host in that country. Maybe to add, some of you may wonder what is about the UK. Universities or hosts in the UK are still eligible to host a fellow under this call. So if you're working with a university in the UK, continue working with them and prepare your proposal. There are no problems for this call this year. What is funded? Again, this is just a quick summary. The amount that is available. The key message here, this is a very generous fellowship that will allow you to fully focus on your research and on your career development. There is money also available for your family if you happen to have a family already. So you really can totally dedicate yourself to your career advancement. Just a little bit about the timeline. As we know, oh, very snazzy. As we know, we're currently working, all of you are currently working on your proposals, and you would hear in February whether you have been successful or not, and then the first opportunity for you to start this fellowship would be in May next year. But the funders are very generous, making allowances for your specific circumstances. You have the opportunity to postpone the commencement of the fellowship by up to 1 year. So right now, you need to work towards the deadline of the 9th of September to put together a solid proposal. How do you apply? This is an application that has to be submitted via the Horizon 2020 participant portal. Don't worry too much about taking notes. I'm sure you all know this by now. This is just a reminder. We will share the slides after the presentation. You can just click on what is hyperlinked here, or you can make use of this QR code. The bottom line is you should be studying, and I'm sure you all do, the work program and the guide for applicants when you're drafting your proposal to make sure that you are really sticking to what the funder, the European Commission, is looking for in a strong proposal. I think this just really, as I said, as a quick recap, and I will now hand over to Isabella. Isabella is the expert, as I said. She's a national contact point. She's part of a Europe-wide network of experts that are available to advise researchers like yourselves that are hoping to apply for this with your questions and concerns. So Isabella, I will now make you the presenter, and you can continue with your presentation. So let me just quickly, just give me a second. I just need to, oops, go over here and make you the presenter. Now, Isabella, please.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay, very good. Good. So, hello everyone, my name is Isabelle, and today I'm very happy for this opportunity to present you aspects of the individual fellowship of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. So just to introduce myself, Sibilla Martinelli and myself, we are the two Swiss national contact points for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. So in every country, there are people appointed to be national contact points, and they are supporting applicants, giving information, answering questions, or supporting their proposal submission. So if you are interested to come to a Swiss host, please contact us. We are at EUResearch. And of course, some of you are not thinking about Switzerland, but other countries. And this is the link where you can find all the NCPs worldwide. So please contact the NCP of your future host country, get in contact and check with them about your proposal. I would also like to focus on the status of Switzerland, and you have seen in the presentation of Susanne that Switzerland is an associated status country. So we are there's no restriction. We can fully participate in Horizon 2020. And the goal of today's webinar is to I got these two main questions, is about how to write a competitive proposal based on what makes a good host, how to find them, and what makes a good proposal. An overview of the evaluation criteria. So I will go through these two main questions. And first of all, I would also like to just remind you, this individual fellowship is all about mobility and career development. So it's not just a regular research proposal, it's really about transnational fellowship, and that you have to think about your career development. So it's really awarded to the best and most promising researcher, and it's an individual fellowship linked to you individually. I quickly want to summarize the different types of fellowship. So most people apply for the standard European fellowship. And there's this European fellowship is for fellows coming to or moving within Europe, and it can go from 1 year to 2 years. So you can also do a 1-year fellowship or a 1.5-year fellowship. You're really free to choose, but of course most people apply for 2 full years, so they can also make the biggest impact. Within the European fellowship, there's a standard one. Then there's also the career restart and the reintegration and the society and enterprise panels. These are multidisciplinary panels with a special budget, and they also had a slightly higher success rates. So please read the guide what these special panels have as criteria. So in career restart, you need to have a continuous break in research activity. In the reintegration panel, it's for people who have left Europe but come back again. And society and enterprise is exclusively for those who want to do a fellowship outside academia. Then we have the global fellowship that supports fellows who want to first go outside Europe and then come back to Europe. So there is this outgoing phase of 1 to 2 years and returning of 1 year. Returning is mandatory. Okay, and here the mobility rule applies to the country outside. So it's not possible that you, for example, you're currently at Singapore for more than a year and you want to do a global fellowship again with Singapore. That would not be possible. However, if you have maybe just arrived in Singapore, this would be also a possibility to do a global fellowship with funding for the outgoing phase, and then you know in 1 or 2 years you want to return to European host. As I said, today I cannot cover everything, so I also would like to recommend here to watch our webinar. So there's a 1-hour webinar where we go also into the depths of this call and the different aspects. So what makes a good host and how to find them? I think this is a very important question, and of course I hope that most of you know already where to go, but maybe some of you are still in the phase of looking for a good host. So first of all, about the eligibility. So you can do a Marie Curie individual fellowship basically in a host located in a European member state or associated country. And this institute must be active in research and innovation, and it can be academic or non-academic. So if you would be interested to do a postdoc in a company, for example, this is also possible with a Marie Curie fellowship. So in the case of a global fellowship, you have a host in Europe that signs the grant agreement, but you have a partner organization outside Europe. So this is the logic. You need to have a host in Europe. And for the host, what's very important is the mobility rule. So you cannot just freely choose anywhere. It's really about moving. So in the standard European fellowship, it's about this 12 months in the 3 years before the call deadline. So every day counts. So you cannot apply if you have 1 day more in this country. Okay, so you should not have spent more than 12 months in the 3 years before the call deadline. And this is residence and work permit. So place of main activity. In the case of a career restart, reintegration, or society and enterprise panel, the mobility rule is a bit softer, and they say not more than 36 months in the 5 years before the call deadline. So benefits for researchers and institutions. This is very important to also think. Of course, you want to benefit from the host and the supervisor, but there should be a two-way transfer of knowledge. So you are experienced researchers, meaning that you also bring in skills, knowledge, and a network of collaborations. So also think what kind of benefits you will bring into the host, not just thinking you get benefits, but write in the proposal what is the benefit for both. And here I come to the most important part, I think, for the fellowship is that you have a very clear story about your fellowship. This is called magic triangle. So this fellowship is of course about you and your career. So you need to have a very clear vision where you want to go, what you want to do in your future. Let's say you want to do a research career in academia, or you want to do one outside academia. All of this is very important to have clear in mind. Then the institution and supervisor has to fit also for your career development, but also for your project. So let's say you're an excellent scientist and you have a very ambitious project, but this has also to fit with the host where you want to do it. There must be the place to do this project. So you have to think that all these three aspects match together. So it would be strange if you are an excellent scientist and you go to an excellent institute, but your project is rather not very outstanding. It would not make sense, right? So all the three aspects have to be coherent and make sense. I also want to say about host and supervisor, it's a good way to think about secondments. So during a Marie Curie fellowship, it is possible to be 1 to 6 months, depending on the length of your fellowship, to go outside your normal host to a partner organization. And this is possible in the EU member states or associated country. So let's say you want to come to Switzerland, you have your host in Zurich, and you want to learn a special technique in Berlin, in Germany, then you can say, I want to go 3 months to this university in Berlin. So in this way, finding a host is of course to find the main host, but you can also think about partner organizations that would make sense to your project and your career development. So I would like about finding a host or a supervisor. Of course, this is very tricky and we get asked again and again if we can make recommendations, and actually we cannot, because Marie Curie is completely bottom up, meaning that it's open to all fields and you're the expert for your career and your project, that you have to think, where is the place to go and who is the supervisor with whom I can do my ambitious project? So in that sense, we can't give you advices or recommendations, but there are two websites where expressions of interest are published. So there is Net for Mobility. This is a website created by a network of NCPs. So my colleagues all over the world, we have this project together where we support researchers related to Marie Curie fellowships or different actions of Marie Skłodowska actions. And you can find on their website this EOI, this expression of interest. And then you can choose by country, by action meaning fellowship, or by panel. So let's say if you're engineering or social sciences, you can also check there. And there are different hosts that have published their expression of interest. So this is a good way to see who would like to offer themselves as a host. So you can contact them. And there are many offers at the moment. So please go and check if there's one that suits your profile. In addition, there's EURAXESS, of course, and there's also this search for hosting. So you can check there the country and what kind of research program, and you will find possibilities there. And I hope with that I could give you an idea what is really important when you are looking for a host. Is of course eligibility with the country, the mobility rule, the possibility of secondments. But I think the foremost important is that your story of excellence, this triangle, makes sense. I would like to continue about the overview of the evaluation criteria and what makes a good proposal. So I think the most important is really that you know these documents, the guide for applicant and the work program for the Marie Curie actions. So especially the guide, you have to know it almost by heart. You really have to follow it step by step. So really stick to it, because the people who evaluate your proposal, they also just follow the guide. So they have no hidden agenda how to evaluate your proposal, but they go through every subchapter of this guide. Now about the proposal preparation, who does what? So there's a summary of research idea that comes from you or the host. There's discussion between you and the supervisor, and then the proposal writing happens mainly on the side of the researcher. And there's this feedback loop with the supervisor, and maybe you can also ask for an NCP for a feedback. And then there's the submission done by the researcher and the supervisor together. So you cannot submit a proposal without the agreement of a host and the supervisor. And as it's now summer and when you go on holiday, I would really recommend to get in touch very early with your supervisor to find out when is the time that you can count on his feedback. So it's not happening last minute. The proposal content, so there's mainly part A, B1 and B2. A is about general information, let's say your acronym, the descriptors, administrative information about you and the organization. So these are all information that you can just write in. It's not evaluated, it's just to see the eligibility and where you're going. Then B1 is really the most important document. So there's a page limit of 10 pages, and there are 3 sections: excellence, impact, and implementation. And I will go more into depth of these 3 sections. So this is really the heart of the whole proposal. And then B2, this gives additional information. So there's a CV, the capacity of the organization where you're going, questions again about ethical aspects. And if you're going for a global fellowship, you need to have a letter of commitment in section 7. There are at least 3 experts reading and evaluating your proposal. And this is organized by the Research Executive Agency. And I think it's very important to keep in mind who is reading this proposal. It's not your supervisor, it's not your colleague in your field, there are 3 experts. And we have also learned that there's maybe one person very close to your field, but they also choose one person who is a bit less close to your field because they look at different aspects. So as I said, this is not about a regular research proposal, but different aspects are important. So for these reasons, I have experts that are very close to your field, but also some that can read and understand, but they are not necessarily the super expert in your subfield. There's the 3 award criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. You see that the scores have different weighting. So the most important score is the one of excellence, counting 50%. However, if you want to get the fellowship, you need also have good scores in impact and implementation. This is a rough estimation or a guideline about the page numbers. So because you have a page limit of 10 pages, and when we have looked at successful proposal, we have seen that about 5 pages go to excellence, and impact is about 1.5 pages, and implementation takes again 3.5 pages. So even if implementation counts least, it takes a lot of space. So please keep this guideline in mind. Of course, you can go 6 pages in excellence, but keep in mind that the other sections are also important and they use their space. Now I would like to go to excellence. I would like to give an overview of the subchapters and give some advice for every subchapter. So there are these 4 subchapters in excellence. Keep in mind you should have done this in 5 pages. And the very first one is about the project. So to what extent is it novel? To what extent is it inter or multidisciplinary? And is there a gender dimension in your project? And as it's written, appropriate consideration, this means if there's no interdisciplinary aspect or there's no gender aspect in the research question itself, you don't have to invent one. But if there is one, you should clearly describe it. These are also the additional information given in the guide. So you should give an introduction, you should describe the state of the art, the objectives, the methods, what's original about it, and as I said, if interdisciplinarity and gender dimension, if it applies to your project. So I think the most important point here is that you should formulate an overarching aim or goal of your project. So the reader should immediately understand what this is all about. So imagine these experts are reading about 10 proposals besides their regular job. So when they read the proposals, they want to immediately grasp what is the essence of it. So provide them the objective of your project as early as possible on page 1. And then you can fine tune it with specific research questions. We always say keep the state of the art part focused on your topic. So this is not a regular research review paper or anything. You need to describe the state of the art, so it is possible to assess that you go beyond the state of the art, but it should be focused. And we always hear from experts with whom we have interviews and dialogues that they like to have graphics and tables, so they can immediately get also the information out of these illustrations. Graphics, of course, take space, so try to make them the best graphics so that it's really very obvious what message you want to convey with this graphic. Take time to make a really the best graphic possible for your proposal. So the project should be ambitious, but it must be feasible. So this is very important to keep in mind. This is a 2 years fellowship normally. It can go to 3 years, but normally it's 2 years. So what you propose there should be feasible. Then the second subchapter is about training and the two-way transfer of knowledge between the researcher and the host. And you see already, this shows the special aspect of the Marie Curie Fellowship. They really want to boost your career, meaning they want to see that you have a training plan. So spell out training objectives. You need to be very clear, what do you want to learn during these 2 years of fellowship? So it's not just about 2 years of doing research, but you want to learn something in addition, new skills, new knowledge. This can also be transferable skills or soft skills that are important for your career in the future. So as I say, link this to your overall short and long-term career goal. So let's say if your career vision is to do research career outside academia, you might want to have training objectives related to this. Okay, that you want to learn something about patents or project management in the non-academic sector. What specific measures will you use to embed your knowledge into the host organization? So this is also very important to keep in mind. It's, as I said in the beginning, it's not just you getting a benefit, but show them that you will also bring a benefit to the host. Now the third subchapter is about the supervisor and your integration into the team. And of course, you need to know the supervisor and that you have to show that this person is an expert in the research area. And as I said, the integration is very important for this two-way transfer of knowledge, meaning have a very clear idea in your mind how the supervision arrangement should be. So will you meet the supervisor every week or every second week? What is the interaction between you and the supervisor? And make it as concrete and specific as possible. Now we come to the last one of the excellence section, and this is about the potential of the research to reach and reinforce professional maturity, independence during the fellowship. And this has often been a bit confusing. So in 1.4, you basically have to describe yourself based on your past achievements, justifying that you are the appropriate candidate to do this fellowship and this ambitious project. So basically you have to describe your track record, and this track record has to be excellent, appropriate to your career stage, discipline and sector. So I can't tell you how many papers you need to have published. This really depends on the discipline and sector and your career stage. So maybe you just finished your PhD or you have already 15 years of research experience since your PhD, and the experts will read it accordingly. So don't worry about this, but you have to describe in 1.4 what you have achieved so far and that you're able to do this project. So provide a clear statement that you are a good match to the proposed research and demonstrate that you will learn something new. Now we come to the impact section. There are 3 subchapters, about 1.5 pages. And now we come to 2.1 that often sounds very similar to 1.4, but 2.1 is about the impact on your life, on your career. So to what extent does the fellowship help you to do this career that you are thinking of? So where do you want to go and how does this fellowship contribute to getting there? And it's very important that you just justify all your claims. So you can of course say this fellowship will have an impact that I do a great career in science, but then you have to justify why. So because of a great project, because of the training you propose, because of the new collaborations, because of the new network, and so on. So link 2.1 back to the excellence section. Will you be integrated into existing European and international networks of the host? Will you create your own network? So the fellowship will end after 2 years, but what will stay is the network and the collaborations. So show to what extent the fellowship and being integrated into this new network will boost your career. Quality of the proposed measures to exploit and disseminate the project results. So this is now the next circle of impact. The first circle of impact is the impact on your life, on your career. And the second one is about the impact on your science community. So dissemination means sharing research results with potential users. So this can be your peers in the research field, but also industry or policymaker. And exploitation is using results for commercial purposes or in public policy making or for a next research project. So exploitation is using the result and dissemination is sharing the result. So this was 2.2, and 2.3 is about communication. This is sharing about the project to people who might not use it. This is really about the outreach. So keep in mind, You're using taxpayers' money, so you have to also explain them what you're doing. So explain your communication strategy here. When do you want to communicate about your project? To whom do you want to communicate, and what is the best channel? Is the social media the best channel? Who will read your tweets? Or is the best channel to be active on an outreach activity at your university? Or will you go to schools, or do you want to speak on the radio about your project? So think about different possibilities and think about something that you like to do and that you really want to do. Don't just use something generic because you're not interested in it. I think 2.3 is really important to show that you know about the importance of communicating to a wider audience. Now we come to implementation, the last section that takes about 3 pages or 3.5 pages. There are 3 subchapters here. And the first one is about the work plan. So it's also about the tasks and resources. And here we say it's good to describe the work packages that are subparts of your main project. So in Excellence, you've described your project, you have described the method in the aspect of excellence. So don't describe all the details of how you will do it in excellence when this is not about the excellence aspect of it. Okay, but in 3.1 is really how will you implement this whole project and your fellowship. And maybe you have several research questions, and then every question would, for example, be a work package. This is a very elegant way of doing, but the work package is also, for example, communication or management. So it's not just research related. And every work package has resources, tasks, milestones, and deliverables. Sorry, just to say, and they should also be showed in the Gantt chart. You will have an example of a Gantt chart in the guide. So also there, it's very important. A Gantt chart gives immediately impression to the reader if you have a clear notion about time management and project management. So try to make them really the best Gantt chart ever that is easily understandable and gives an overview of your project. The second subchapter is about management structure, procedure, especially risk management. So here I want to just emphasize about the risk management that really indicates if you are aware about the risks of your project, it also shows that you have a very well planned project. Okay, so of course, if it's an ambitious project, there are risks. So explain them what would be plan B. And important, not just scientific, but also project related risks. So what happens if you can't, let's say, travel anymore, or if a certain place you can't get access anymore, what would be plan B? And the very last one is simply about the infrastructure of your host. So please keep in mind, this is not about how great the host is in general. You can describe this in B2, but this is to show and prove that the host has a necessary infrastructure so you can implement the project. So logistic facilities, infrastructure that are important for your project should be described here. Especially for global fellowship, you should describe for both, or when you go for a secondment, you should also describe this for the partner organization. So basically you have to explain why the project has a maximum chance of success if carried out there. So I would quickly like to wrap up with some offers that we do at EUResearch. EUResearch is basically the office that supports applicants who come to Switzerland. So this is really about the services for a Swiss host. So you can find possibilities for writing trainings. Sibylla and myself, we have started already last week to do a one-day online writing training where we go in much more depth for every section, and we do exercises with our successful proposals. Please only inscribe if you're coming to Switzerland. We really check the inscriptions and we have to restrict it, otherwise we would just be too many, and as it is interactive, we can't just open it for everyone. So you will find these links different events that are planned this summer. We also offer online tutorial and an annotated guide for applicants coming to Switzerland, and these are available on request. Now, for all those who are not coming to Switzerland but are still interested in annotated guide, there is this IF 2020 handbook published on the Net4Mobility website. So if you go to net4mobilityplus.eu, you will easily find it there, and there you will find the advices, tips and tricks given by the NCPs from our network. So I will strongly encourage to have a look at this document when you prepare your proposal. So this goes much more into depth than what I could do now in this half an hour. And as I said in the beginning, get the support from the national contact point of the country where you're going to. The support varies a lot because some NCPs have to support many applicants, others have more time or resources for it. So check with them what kind of services they offer. And with that, I'm at the end of my presentation, and I think there are some questions in the chat. And yes, I hope I could give you some insight into the proposal preparation for the Marie Curie Individual Fellowship.
Thank you very much, Dr. Spuehler, for your presentation. I hope it was insightful and informative, and it will help our audience to draft a successful proposal. Yes, there are some questions we would like to address to you. Let's start with the first one. What does it mean that the proposal is good but with low risk? You mentioned it during your presentation. Could you please elaborate a bit?
Maybe this is, I mean, I said each project should be ambitious but feasible. So in a sense that this is not an ERC proposal. And it is really about boosting your career, and training is a very important aspect. So your project should really help you in your career, but it must be feasible in 2 years. In that sense, I think I did not say low risk. There's always a risk when you do a certain, I mean, it should still be an excellent project. But I think what experts read is they look at your CV or they look at the description of yourself, and they want to feel if you're really able to do this project that you propose. Okay, so they want to
be ambitious, but aim to do doable things. Just to sum up.
Yes, it should fit to your profile, and they should see that this project is ambitious for you as your profile, and should be feasible for your profile.
Can you apply simultaneously to standard fellowship and European fellowship? No, and SE?
Society and enterprise.
Yes,
no, you can only apply for one type of fellowship. So a supervisor can have several fellows, but one fellow should only apply for one fellowship. So if you are going to a company or an institute that is not academic, I strongly recommend to go for the Society and Enterprise, because they really have a higher budget and a much higher success rate. So if you're eligible for both, you should definitely go for the Society and Enterprise panel.
Okay, thank you very much. When is the last date to get NCP's feedback to a full proposal?
This is really, this varies a lot. So Isabelle and myself, we always say our mantra basically is first come, first served. And it's a very busy summer. So yes, I mean, we have started to get already some proposals that are resubmissions, and we said for people who resubmit, our deadline is end of July. So in August, we won't give any feedback anymore to resubmissions, because we think they have a head start to give us earlier their proposals. But we don't have basically a deadline until when people can send us their proposal, because then everybody would send it on that date, and this is just impossible to follow up. We just say make it as complete as possible and as early as possible, because we only give once a feedback, and it's frustrating if a proposal is not, yeah, it's really very much in the making. But just contact us when you come to a Swiss host, and we can give you feedback how many proposals we have, and we have to see day by day. Sometimes we get 5 proposals a day, and then you're just at the bottom of the list, and some days we can say, oh, in the next, it will take two or 3 weeks to give you feedback because we have so many above you. So this, you have to just consider we are 2 people doing this, and it's very difficult to predict how many send us their proposals in advance. But of course, 2 weeks before the call deadline is almost, it's too late. Also for you to adapt it.
Of course. Part B, section 5 asks for 1 page only regarding the list of organizations. How about the length of the whole following table? It's not in the template.
Yes, I think it's about this description of the institution, the capacity of the organization. And for this, I strongly recommend to really get in contact with your host, because they normally have this text about the description. So I think the best is anyway to get in contact with the supervisor and the host. And normally the host has a research office that helps you with the submission in this aspect. So there's a part where you would say this institute has so many Nobel Prize winners or has the best ranking or whatever. And normally hosts have this text and can provide you this information.
Thank you very much. Could you please explain a bit more about gender aspect that you mentioned at one point?
Yes, this is very important and very confusing often. So I think what we need to keep in mind is that Europe really wants to do responsible research and innovation. And there are several principles that apply to it, and one is gender dimension. And this is not simply about I'm female and my supervisor is also female, but it's about if there is a gender dimension in your project. So if it makes a difference that you interview men or women about this, or does it make a difference for your product? So for example, the airbag system of a car has been developed for men especially, but for women it might be very different. So also in engineering sciences, it would be important that people think about the product, and if women or men use it similarly, or if it matters that you yourself are a woman or a man for your research questions, if you do interviews. So all these kind of questions to ask yourself if there is a gender dimension in the research project itself. And of course, there are many subjects where it doesn't matter, in mathematics or astrophysics. So there, people should not invent something. But it is very bad if there is a gender aspect and you don't describe it. Then you just lose points.
That's very clear. Thank you for this clarification. The other one is about host institution. If the host institution is not listed in the MSCA expression of interest, does it mean that the host institution lacks experience with the MSCA fellowship, and will it affect the selection procedure?
No, not at all. No, I think there are many great institutions that don't write expression of interest because there are so many people contacting them and they don't have to write it out that they want to have fellows because people just contact them. I would really like to encourage everyone to contact these scientists that they would like to work with directly and describe their project ideas, and they would like to propose a project together with them. So of course, expression of interest is a great platform, but this is not the only way to find a host. Maybe you can also think of your own network that from conferences, but just directly try to contact them.
Clear. What is the example of our contribution to the host?
Yes, so I think especially because this is now mainly people from Asia listening, I think it's very important to think about your network and collaborations and to really show the added value that you have done research in a country outside Europe and that you bring in something very different, a new aspect, new collaborations. So basically open the door of collaborations also for the hosts in Europe. Okay, so I think this is one thing that you can say you will continue a certain collaboration with them, or you will give a tutorial about what you have done in the past, or you will contribute to the journal club presenting your past paper, or you, I don't know, if you're social sciences and you want to think about an exhibition or to contribute to an exhibition with your done work in the past. This is a great way not just to transfer knowledge, but maybe also communication. So you can think really how you can bring in your knowledge and skills into your new place.
Okay, thank you very much. Now about COVID and COVID times. How should coronavirus-related time be formulated? Traveling to a non-EU country and back can involve 2 weeks here and 2 weeks there of the quarantine. ...
Yes, I did not make a slide, but of course it's very important and it's very difficult to foresee what will happen. I mean, nobody knows how it will be. What we have just got the communication that it might be important to write it in the risk management, and I would also strongly recommend it. I mean, this is meant by risks that are not related to your research project, but about the project itself, that you might not be able to travel, or you might not be able to start when you want to because of restrictions, travel restrictions, or you might not be able to do the secondment, or you might not be able to organize a conference that is international. So then you have to think of plan B. For some cases, just postponing, and for some cases about an online version of something. What I want to just say, what happened now is that many fellows could not work on their projects, of course, during the lockdown. So they could not go to the labs. And so either they needed to suspend the fellowship for certain months. This means they had no salary, and nothing of the project money has been used. So they could just make like a break, a suspension. Or they found an arrangement with their host. So basically what you have seen in the budget is that the money that the host gets, and then the host will make a contract with the fellow. So you have to find an arrangement with your hosting institution what this would mean. So if you can still get salary, even if you cannot work on your project. However, the commission does not prolong your fellowship. It's impossible to give everybody more money. There's so many fellows currently doing their fellowship, so it's impossible for Europe basically to pay them additional months because of the COVID situation.
And if I may just add, okay, please.
And one more thing, I mean, they were discussing actually about supporting COVID projects in addition, and this idea has been abandoned because they really want to keep Marie Curie completely bottom up. So there's no hidden agenda to support COVID projects in addition. But of course, it's important that you show the importance of your project to the current situation in any social current situation. So if your project is related to the current crisis, it's of course important to emphasize it. If it's not a problem. But if it is, please emphasize it.
And allow me to add from my side, please visit EURAXESS.org. You will see the news. The main news right now is that unofficially Euronews reported that Korea is on the draft list of countries, of 15 countries that will be allowed to enter Europe without any restrictions. Now, in exactly 6 minutes, the EU-Korea virtual summit starts between Teresa von der Leyen and President Moon Jae-in. This issue for sure will be discussed. The initial date to ease all the restriction is July 1st, so it's tomorrow. But according to some diplomatic sources and insights, it might not be July 1st, it might be in the following weeks. So please stay tuned and please visit EURAXESS.org for more information. Okay, going back to Q&A. Yes?
Maybe I can just ask, because think about when you will start a project, it's in March, the earliest it will be March next year, and nobody can say how it will be. Okay, so please keep just this in mind. It's good to show you're thinking about risks, but it's not about this summer, right? It's about
and to monitor situation constantly. Yes.
Yes, constantly. Yeah.
Isabelle, what about the ethical aspects of the proposal? What should be included from the ethical aspect of it?
So there's an ethical review that is quite strict, but this is independent of the evaluation. So there are questions in part A, and there you have to reply if you work with embryonic cells or with humans or whatever. And if you answer there to yes to some questions, you have to reply to additional questions in B2. And it's not expected that you get already licenses or anything. If you don't have it yet, write that you don't have them, and it will become an important point in your project once it's funded. So there are questions in A and B2 that needs to be answered related to ethics. Otherwise, in the proposal itself, I think ethics, if it's an obvious project where ethics is important and needs to be also described in the excellence section, I would also strongly recommend to do it, but it's basically covered by A and B2.
Okay, thank you. I think it's pretty clear. How about acceptance rate, which probably is successful rate? Can you tell us some numbers? What are the approximate successful rates for each panel?
So for the standard European fellowship, independent of the panel you're applying, the success rate in the last years has been about 13 to 15%. And in the career restart, reintegration panel, society and enterprise panel, it has been about 20 or above. Also, the global fellowship had also a higher success rate. So all these details can also be shown in the webinar that I have mentioned in the beginning. I did not want to show now statistics. But just keep in mind, if you're eligible for a career restart, reintegration, or society enterprise, please give them preference because they have higher budget and higher success rate, and also global fellowship.
For MSCA, is the supervisor who applies or is the first stage researcher? That's the very basic question.
Can you ask again? Sorry, I could not.
For MSCA, the supervisor will apply or the first stage researcher?
You apply together, basically. I am not sure. I think the researcher cannot just apply on its own. I think the supervisor has also to be there.
I think the question is probably who submits the application on the participant portal.
Yeah, I mean, the researcher can do it constantly, but I think at the end, I mean, you have to indicate your supervisor so he always, or he or she gets notified when there is an update. And maybe this is an important point. If you want to apply, please make already now an account and start the submission process now, because you can always upload the newest version. And don't wait until the call deadline, because then there are many technical crashes. So always the newest uploaded version will be the one that is read by the expert.
Okay, now about Switzerland. Which host universities in Switzerland are the part of this fellowship?
You can go to any university or ETH in Zurich or Lausanne are the academic ones, of course. There are also the University of Applied Sciences where you can go. So basically every institute that is active in research. So as I said, companies as well, Nestle or, you know, any pharma company, normally they have their own money and fundings, but you can also, of course, also go to a startup in Switzerland. They would be very interested to host a fellow. So they are very, I mean, every institute that is active in research and has the capacity to supervise you can be a host.
So there is no limitation, that the list is open. Almost every organization that is involved in research can host an MSCA fellow.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. One of us has an innovative and patentable research topic and is skeptical towards communicating with a person whom she or he doesn't know. How can he save the IP rights?
Yes, I know this is very tricky to I think when you apply with companies especially, there are different levels of security that needs to be addressed. I'm not so sure in this question if this is about if there's hesitation to share this idea with a potential supervisor, or if it's just in general about the communication strategy in the fellowship. But of course, if it's about the proposal, describe what is feasible and what you agree with your host, what you can do. And I think especially in communication, it's not about sensitive issues or results. And in dissemination, of course, if you are going for a patent, you want to publish it before, right? So all of this is considered to the reader when you describe it clearly. Now about contacting the supervisor and sensitive topics, I can't really give recommendations. It's really up to you how you do your conversations to define your supervisor.
Yes, that's a delicate issue. An African researcher can propose a project that can be useful to the continent, or must it be a proposal that has impact alone in Europe?
Very good question. So we have seen successful proposals that really propose project like in South Africa, where I did not immediately see a benefit for Europe. But this person could just clearly explain why this project should be done and should be done with a Swiss host. So you can, of course, do a project related to Africa. However, you will be recruited by a European host, and you should mainly be there. So I talked about secondments that are only possible in member states and associated country. You can do some field work and some short visits outside Europe, but it should not be the main aspect of your fellowship, because you need to have this transfer of knowledge on both sides. So for this reason, I think it's a bit tricky, but it's possible.
Thank you, Isabelle.
Anyway, sorry,
Yep.
it's very important to keep in mind the impact of Europe, of course, because it's European taxpayers' money. So you should not deny it, that this is important.
So everything is possible, but there must be some European connection at the end of the day. Is there any limitation?
Or show that you communicate the importance of this project and the relevance for European people when you do communication strategy.
Is there any limitation for the number of awardees in each country?
Numbers of? Sorry, I didn't understand.
Grantees, fellows granted in each country.
No, there is no restriction about this.
There is no quota. Okay.
There's no quota.
How much is part B weighted in the evaluation?
I mean, part B1 is the only one that's evaluated. I'm not so sure. So there's B1 with section excellence, impact and implementation, and this is the only one that gets scores, and this is the one that will decide your ranking and if you get the money. B2 is not evaluated in itself, the score, but they give additional information, of course, like the CV. So it's still important.
Thank you. Will it be disadvantageous if you are already well established in your home institution? For example, if you are already a professor, how can you still present your application that you can still benefit from the fellowship in spite of your professor position?
Yes. So I have also been in contact with somebody who tried several times a fellowship, and she has, of course, a very advanced profile, and the feedback that she gets is that it's not obvious what is the benefit of this fellowship for her career. So I think this needs to be kept in mind. If you can already do everything and you have all the skills and knowledge already to be an established researcher, Marie Curie Fellowship is not really the right funding for you. Having said that, there are people who apply for it, let's say they are 60 years old and they apply for it and still get it because they could clearly describe they learn something in addition that is important for their career. So one needs to really keep in mind that you have already an excellent profile, but you have some gaps that you want to close or you want to learn something in addition so that it boosts your career. And if you're already a professor, it's difficult to justify why you should get a fellowship, and if not, younger scientists basically should get it.
Perhaps you should consider one of the European Research Council grants. Is it possible to try to contact more than one supervisor?
Is it correct, or what is it?
Is it possible to contact more than one supervisor?
So you should have one main supervisor in the proposal. This is legally also very important because it's the host of this supervisor will be the one that gets the money and signs the grant agreement. And I think for the proposal, it doesn't make sense to propose several supervisors because the role is very clear that they should support your career development. So there should be only one in a proposal, or two if you do a secondment. But of course, you can contact several to ask the question if they want to work with you on a fellowship. So there's nothing wrong about this, but at the end, there should be only one that you want to work with.
Thank you very much. What are punishments if the actual project differs from the one in the proposal? If the Gantt chart is detailed is different than the actual implementation of the project?
So the Marie Curie Fellowship does not have so many checkpoints as other European collaborative projects. There is basically like a checkpoint in the middle or in the second half of it. And everybody knows that life can go differently than proposed, especially the Gantt chart is basically the best guess. So give your best guess. You will also see the example in the proposal just gives the months in numbers. So don't write April, May, June, because you don't know when you will exactly start the fellowship. But give a feeling of the time that you want to fill in these 2 years, how you want to go about this project. So the Gantt chart is basically there to convince the reader that you know what you're talking about and that you can do this project. And then you can, of course, change. So there will be no product officer asking you, are you really there in the Gantt chart in month 3 as you have proposed?
Thank you very much. The question is about the table in part 2, section 5. The hosting organization provided about 7 pages and also 6 references, although only 5 are allowed. What should be done in that case?
You have to cut it. you have to find the best way to cut it and just go back to them and explain what is asked. I mean, sometimes the host does not know the guidelines as you will know it, so you have to just communicate with them.
So the page limit is crucial.
Yeah.
Thanks. Is it possible to extend a 1-year proposal by the researcher working 50% on the MSCA IF project? And that would be 2 years.
So part-time fellowship is possible, but it's something that people request once they get the funding. So at proposal stage, don't write about part-time because they want to evaluate it all the proposal the same way as if you would work 100%. But part-time is possible for family reasons or career reasons. Let's say you want to work beside to create your own startup or whatever. But otherwise, you should work 100%. And the part-time has to be requested later and discussed with the project officer. So normally there's no problem to apply for part-time. And then, of course, the fellowship will be prolonged accordingly. So let's say if you go to 50%, it's double the time you can go.
Okay. Is IRB approval required in advance? I guess it's institutional review board approval required in advance.
Sure, I'm not sure about this question, but I think there's no such approval.
Yes, I think institutional review board is not part of the evaluation of stock relevance. Susanne, am I correct?
Yeah, not necessary.
It's not necessary. Okay. Is it about communicating with the potential supervisor? Yes. Sorry. I will graduate in November 2020 and I will complete the PhD in 3 years in total. I also have 1 year of experience pre-training to research. Based upon 3 years or PhD, am I eligible for MSCA IF?
I think Susanne explained the eligibility very clearly. So they are very strict about what it means to be an experienced researcher. So you need to have a PhD at the call deadline. So 9th of September 2020, you should have the PhD title or have 4 years full-time research experience counting from the date where you got the title that enables you to do a PhD. So for example, in Switzerland, you can start a PhD after your master degree, and you can count all your research experience starting from this master degree. And let's say you did a project where you worked 50% on research, then you can also count this, but only according to the percent that you worked on it. And you need to have proofs for it. So in B1, no, sorry, in A, you have to describe it, and they will come back to you and ask for a documental proof if it's not obvious. So I would really, I mean, from what I can just hear about this description, it doesn't sound eligible to me.
Yeah, Isabelle, I guess the question is whether the PhD itself counts as research.
I mean, normally, yes. I mean, some people do a lot of teaching during a PhD, then it's of course important how much they have also been doing teaching besides it. If sometimes it's substantial, then it's of course not the same. But if, yeah, this person did 3 years PhD, right? So this is not enough. if he doesn't have the title at the call deadline.
I also think, looking at the question, that the eligibility criteria is not met in this particular case. Hold on with us, Isabelle, 3 more questions to go. Can I apply with a project that is not close to my previous experience?
Yes, you can. You need to justify that you can do it. So basically, it's good if the project is not just simply a continuation because you want to learn something new during the fellowship. However, it must be something you need to show that you will learn these skills and knowledge in the new host. And this needs to be described very clearly so that the reader has confidence that you will actually be able to do it. Okay, so you need to basically convince that you can do it, even if you don't have yet the skills. So this is the whole magic about this proposal. You will learn something new, and how will you learn it? So this is 1.2 about the training objectives.
Thank you very much. Is it possible to have several secondments?
Yes, so you can do several secondments, you can do several periods of time, you can do it outside academia, inside academia, but there is a limit in the total time. So there is the definition in the guide, how many months you can do in total, and you just have to stay within this time limit. And they try to assure in this way that you're still spending time in your main host where you should be integrated.
And the last one, Isabelle, can several starting dates be named in the proposal, for example, because of the COVID situation?
I think this is not so much of an importance for the evaluation stage, because you can also, for example, your proposal gets on the reserve list, meaning that you only get the funding at the completely arbitrary time. So not in February, but maybe in September or in October, and you will just negotiate when will be the starting date. So the latest starting date is September a year later. So you can really postpone the starting date 1.5 years once you get the funding. So in this sense, I think this should not take space in your proposal when you will concretely start. If this is important because of field work or anything where time is crucial, just name it. You would do it in springtime, for example, but this is not that of importance for the evaluation of your proposal.
And Isabelle, really last one to you. Can you provide feedback on proposals? Yes,
we do. For Swiss hosts, we offer feedback written or one-to-one Skype session, for example. As I said, we really appreciate if it's almost complete, if you have looked at our annotated guide also, if your supervisor had a look at it, this would be all optimal. But just get in contact with us if you have a Swiss host. Please keep this in mind. We will not be able to look at it if it's not a Swiss host. Just get too many requests.
Okay, really last one. In case the supervisor changed his institution, his affiliation, can the fund transfers to the new place?
Can you say again? What, transferred in a new place?
If the supervisor changed his institution, can the fund be transferred to the new place, his new affiliation?
Normally, yes. Normally, there should be no problem. So you can go together with the supervisor to the new place. These are all the so-called amendments once the project has started. So, I mean, Europe really wants then to, I mean, once you get an excellent score and you're ranked to get budget, they really want to support you to realize your project. And in that sense, they are very cooperative, and you need to establish a good contact with a project officer. So every project gets a project officer, and these kinds of things can be discussed with a project officer. Changing host just by yourself or changing supervisor is more tricky because the fellowship is really linked to you, the host, and the supervisor. So you solve this story based on these aspects. And if you want to just change supervisor due to some reason, it will take a bit more negotiation. But in general, it's possible. And maybe one more thing, let's say your supervisor is just in transition phase. So he or she knows that in the future, let's say in September, he will actually be working in a different lab. Please describe the new lab, because this will be the new host. Because I had some people asking me this. So think about which will actually be your true host in the future.
Thank you very much, Isabelle. I think this will conclude our Q&A session and really informative and insightful presentation. As much as I thank you for all your contribution, I wish all our attendees success in their work, in their proposals, and I hope you will get MSCA this year. Good luck with everything. Please feel free to contact us if you have any further questions or if you need any more assistance. If me or Suzanne is not capable of answering your question, we will transfer your question to experts in Europe. Suzanne, any last word?
Yes, just because we had the question multiple times, we will share the slides. We will also share the recording of this webinar. And I have taken notes of all the questions and the answers, so I will add them to the presentation slides so you can look at them again. And we will add a couple of extra resources for you. The colleagues at the Net for Mobility have created a fabulous handbook for applicants that you should probably look at with lots of important tips and tricks. And we will once again share the contact details of all the NCPs in Europe. So if you're not going to Switzerland, but to any other country, you can also contact Isabelle's colleague in that country to get feedback on your proposal. Yeah, and as Thomas said, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Isabelle. That was excellent. And to all of you, thanks for joining and good luck. Keep your masks on. Stay safe.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.